The sun blazed down on the dusty main street of the small western town, making the wooden buildings glisten under the harsh light. A crowd had gathered in the open-air market, where merchants shouted over each other, hawking everything from horse tack to dried beans. But one voice rose above the rest, gruff and eager, drawing curious eyes from every direction. "Buy one, get one free," the seller bellowed, slapping his hand against a weathered wooden crate. Two of the finest Apache women, ready for work or companionship, first come, first served. People paused, some whispering in disbelief, others stepping back to give the man room. The women, standing quietly to one side, exchanged uneasy glances. They were dressed in modest, traditional attire, their long dark hair braided and adorned with small beads, their expressions a mixture of defiance and apprehension. At that moment, a lone cowboy rode into the market. Dust clung to his boots and spurs, and the brim of his hat shadowed his weathered face. He pulled his horse to a slow stop, scanning the scene with calm, calculating eyes. His gaze fell on the crate and the women standing beside it. Something about the seller's proclamation, something about the urgency and the strange offer, caught his attention. He dismounted and adjusted the leather straps of his saddle, keeping a measured distance from the crowd. The seller, noticing the cowboy, called out again with a grin. "Step right up, stranger. Don't miss your chance. Buy one, get one free. These are the finest women in all of the territory." The cowboy's eyes flicked to the women, who now seemed even more uneasy under the heat and the stares of the townspeople. He noticed the tension in their posture, the way they clutched at the folds of their skirts. Yet there was a spark in their eyes, a fire that spoke of strength and resilience. He walked closer, boots crunching on the hard-packed dirt. "I'll take them both," he said simply, his voice firm but calm. A few in the crowd murmured, surprised by his decisiveness. The seller's grin widened. "Well, well, first one here, first one served. You won't regret it, cowboy." The women, realizing their fate was now tied to this man, shifted nervously. The cowboy, sensing their fear, gave a small nod, a gesture meant to convey reassurance. He did not reach out, he did not demand obedience, he simply stood there, allowing them to measure him as much as he measured them. In that tense moment, the dusty market felt suspended in time. Horses stamped, merchants shouted, and children craned their necks to see the unusual transaction. Yet for the cowboy and the women, all else seemed to fade. The deal was done, the decision made, and a new chapter was about to begin, one that none of them could have anticipated. As the cowboy led the women to his horse, the crowd slowly dispersed, whispering and shaking their heads at the audacity of the scene. The women mounted cautiously, and the cowboy swung into the saddle. With a final glance at the bustling town, they rode off, leaving behind the market's noise and the sunlit street. Ahead lay open plains, untold adventures, and a journey that would test all of them in ways no one in that dusty town could imagine. The sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the rolling plains as the cowboy led the two Apache women away from the dusty town. The air was dry and heavy with the scent of sagebrush, and the only sounds were the rhythmic clopping of hooves and the occasional distant call of a hawk circling overhead. The women sat side by side on the horse, their expressions cautious but curious, eyes darting between the cowboy, the open horizon, and each other. For a while, none of them spoke. The cowboy's face remained impassive under the brim of his hat, though his mind worked swiftly. He was not used to such an unusual situation. He had ridden many trails, met countless strangers, and faced danger in forms both natural and human. But this was something else entirely. These women were not mere companions, they were strong, proud, and skilled, qualities he could sense even before exchanging a single word. Finally, one of the women spoke. Her voice was quiet but firm, tinged with both suspicion and dignity. "Why did you buy us?" she asked, glancing sidelong at him. Her dark eyes searched his, looking for honesty, for intent, for any sign that he might treat them as less than human. The cowboy hesitated only for a moment. "I didn't buy you to own you," he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. "I bought you to protect you. To make sure no one else harms you before you have a choice of your own." The second woman's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you expect us to trust you?" she asked. Her tone was wary, but not entirely hostile. The fire in her gaze was tempered by curiosity, as if she wanted to see if his actions matched his words. "I don't expect anything," he replied honestly. "But I promise you this, no harm will come to you while you're with me. And when you're ready, you can go wherever you want." For now, we ride together." The women exchanged another look. Slowly, the tension in their bodies eased just a fraction. They were still cautious, but the cowboy's calm demeanor and measured words gave them reason to pause before assuming the worst. It was a small thing, a gesture of trust that might grow over the miles ahead. As the landscape stretched endlessly around them, the cowboy pointed out small details: a stream winding through the canyon, a cluster of wild horses grazing in the distance, a lone deer darting between rocks. The women began to relax incrementally, marveling at the vastness of the plains, a land so different from their home. Conversation came slowly at first, then grew as curiosity overcame fear. Stories began to flow, tales of survival, of family, of distant homelands. The cowboy shared bits of his life, his solitude, and his experiences on the frontier. Laughter, cautious at first, began to break through the tension. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in orange and crimson, an unspoken understanding had begun to form between them. Though the journey was just beginning, the seeds of trust and companionship had been planted. The open plains stretched endlessly ahead, promising challenges, discoveries, and a bond that would be tested by circumstance but strengthened by shared experience. Together, they rode into the twilight, stepping into a future none of them could fully predict. Night had fallen over the plains, and a silver moon hung low, casting a pale glow on the tall grasses swaying in the gentle wind. The cowboy had guided the women to a sheltered hollow near a small creek, its water murmuring softly over smooth stones. He dismounted first, stretching his legs and checking the gear on his horse. The women followed cautiously, their eyes wide as they took in the unfamiliar surroundings, the sounds of the wilderness far different from the dusty town they had left behind. The first woman, still wary but curious, knelt beside the creek to scoop up some water. "It's quiet here," she murmured, her reflection shimmering in the rippling stream. "Too quiet. Are we safe?" The cowboy approached, crouching beside her without invading her space. "For now, yes," he said gently. "This spot is hidden, and the creek provides fresh water. Nothing will find us here tonight." The second woman set down her bundle and studied him with a piercing gaze. "You claim to protect us," she said, "but how can we know your words are true?" He looked up at the moonlit sky, then back at her, meeting her stare evenly. "I have no reason to lie. You are not property to me. You are travelers, like me. For tonight, we ride and rest as equals. Tomorrow, the journey continues, and every choice is yours to make." A moment of silence passed, filled only by the rustling of leaves and the distant call of an owl. Slowly, both women seemed to exhale, letting go of some of the tension that had gripped them since the market. Trust, fragile but forming, was beginning to take root. The cowboy gathered firewood, and soon a small flame flickered, casting warm light across their faces. Shadows danced on the ground as the crackling fire created a sense of intimacy. Around the flames, the women began to open up, sharing stories of their homeland, their families, and the hardships they had endured. Tales of survival, of narrow escapes, and of traditions kept alive despite constant danger. The cowboy listened, occasionally offering his own experiences, days alone on the trail, storms faced, moments of unexpected kindness from strangers. Slowly, laughter began to surface, hesitant at first, then more genuine. In that moment, the fear that had marked the morning seemed distant, replaced by a tentative camaraderie forged in shared vulnerability. As the fire burned lower, the cowboy motioned for the women to rest. They spread blankets near the embers, keeping close to the warmth and to each other. The night stretched on, serene yet filled with the unspoken awareness that the journey ahead would test all of them. Mountains, rivers, and unknown dangers awaited, but for the first time, they felt they would not face them alone. Under the endless expanse of stars, an unspoken bond had begun to form, one built on cautious trust, mutual respect, and the strange coincidence that had brought them together. In the morning, they would ride again, but tonight, they simply existed side by side, learning the rhythm of each other's presence, knowing that in the wild, shared strength was as vital as courage. The fire dwindled to embers, the creek whispered lullabies, and sleep finally claimed them all. Tomorrow, the open plains would demand their skills, their resolve, and their hearts. But tonight, they were just three souls finding connection in the vast solitude of the frontier. Morning came softly, with pale sunlight spilling across the creek and illuminating the hollow where they had camped. The cowboy was already awake, tending the horse and gathering supplies for the day's ride. The women stirred, stretching and shaking off the night's chill. The silence between them was no longer tense, it carried a quiet understanding, a shared recognition of the bond that had begun to form under the stars. The first woman approached the horse, her movements careful but confident. "We will follow your lead," she said, a hint of warmth in her voice. "But remember, we are not your possessions. We ride because we choose to." The cowboy nodded. "I know. And I would never ask otherwise. Our path is ours to share, not to command." They mounted, and the trio set off once again across the wide open plains. The wind swept past them, carrying the scent of sage and earth, and the landscape seemed endless, both beautiful and dangerous. As they rode, they encountered challenges: a fallen tree blocking their path, a herd of wild cattle stampeding nearby, and treacherous rocky terrain. Through it all, they worked as a team, their growing trust and understanding guiding every decision. Conversations flowed more freely than before. The second woman told tales of her family's hunting skills, how they could track animals for miles without leaving a trace. The first spoke of herbal remedies, of survival techniques, learned from elders who had taught them to live with the land rather than fight against it. The cowboy shared his knowledge of navigating the plains, predicting weather, and reading the signs of both people and animals alike. Together, they became a small but capable unit, each complementing the other's strengths. As the sun climbed higher, they stopped at a sheltered glade for rest. The women dismounted, helping to tend the horse and unpack simple food. For the first time, laughter came freely, without tension or fear. They had survived the first stretch of the journey together, proving to themselves and each other that cooperation and trust were stronger than fear or suspicion. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a canyon, where the land dropped sharply into a winding river below. The sight took their breath away. "It's beautiful," one of the women whispered, her eyes wide with awe. The cowboy smiled, understanding the mix of danger and wonder that the frontier always promised. As they prepared to descend the canyon trail, a sense of purpose filled the air. Their bond was no longer fragile, it had grown through shared experience, respect, and the acknowledgement of each other's freedom. The journey ahead remained uncertain, full of challenges and unknowns, but they were no longer strangers bound by circumstance. They were companions, equals in the harsh and magnificent expanse of the western plains. By evening, they found a safe place to set up camp again. The women laughed as they gathered firewood, teasing the cowboy, who joined in with his own dry humor. The open plains stretched endlessly around them, but the sense of isolation no longer felt threatening. Together, they had discovered trust, courage, and companionship. And so, under the stars once more, the cowboy and the Apache women sat by the fire, ready to face whatever adventures the frontier might bring. A simple market deal had brought them together, but choice, respect, and shared experience had forged a bond that would carry them through the wide, untamed land ahead.